Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to another Star Wars Labs review of Andor. Today, we're talking about episode 10, One Way Out. This was the prison break episode we've all been waiting for. We're going to dive into everything that happened in this episode, full spoilers. But before we do so, please hit that like button down below and subscribe to our channel. We're on the way to 1,000 subs, and we are almost there. We're about 50 away. And so, if you guys can subscribe if you're watching this video and you have not yet subscribed, please do so. It'll really help us out. Getting to 1,000 will be a huge mark for us, and it will help us continue to give you guys great content and push our channel forward here in the future with even better content. Comment below, let us know what you thought of Andor episode 10. What are your thoughts on everything that went down? This was a big episode, a turning point episode for the show as we move towards the finale. So we're going to dive into all of it. Also, last thing I want to plug here, we have our tier list pull up. It just went up yesterday. That will determine what our tier list is for next week. Keep voting for the one you want. It will be the topic of our tier list next week. All right, moving on to the review now. We do this review in 3 parts. If you are just joining us for the first time for Andor episode 10, we talk about all 3 main plot points, which are usually Cassian's storyline, the ISB and Ferrex, and Luthen / Mon Mothma, the politicking side. We're going to start with Cassian, obviously, because the Andor prison break was the thing that this episode was built up to, and it was definitely what most of this episode was about. Sanak, what were your thoughts on the prison break we finally got to see?
Yeah, it was everything I wanted it to be. I think it was very nice to see just how active of a role that Cassian plays. Like, obviously, he is the main lead, but I like the nuance of it. Like, he's like playing a part. He doesn't want to be like a leader per se. He still is, that silent wolf, lone wolf sort of character who's learning to make these connections. This is like the first team that he hasn't been assigned to in his life. This is the one, like, okay, yes, he was assigned to this team, but he has a lot more of a personal connection with them instead of just being plugged in last minute like he was with Aldani. So the payoff there for us was that we got to see all these characters that some die, some don't, and they all hit pretty equally well. So that was really fun to see. But we also got to see his building relationship with Kino really come to fruition here. And he's squarely just like, we need you to be the voice. Like, I might have to do all the dirty work. That's what I'm good at. That's where my technical skills, murdering skills all come in use. But we need someone who's the voice, like that we hear in our dreams and our nightmares. I mean, the monologue. Andy Serkis ate. Like, he was going in, and I like that he got egged on a little bit by Cassian to be like the one Kino that we all know him to be. And then I like the passion, the authenticity, the fear, the hope, everything that was really raw and delivered. And I like that how he like reused Cassian's like words of inspiration to him more. And then, we see these cool montages. Again, the practical set work here definitely made it feel a little bit more like, wow, this is like a real prison break, seeing all these Imperials hiding and whatnot. And then they all just jump off the barge to swim away. And then Kino says, I don't know how to swim. And before Cassian can do anything, he's just kind of disconnected, or he's pushed off the barge, which I thought was nice because, us Star Wars fans, we expect like someone to say something like, really cool or dramatic. But this might not be a person who actually ends up surviving. He played his role, he had an impact. He definitely impacted Andor. And that's the end of their connection. That's the end of the story. And that's really how it should be, especially with a character that is so isolated, who's puts himself into this prison of his mind. Overall, it was really great.
This episode was, again, another building block off of what happened on Aldani. Really, we see the small victories, right? Like, this is a much bigger scale revolt than Aldani was. Aldani was just like the suspicion of rebellion, seeds starting to grow. The ISB, the Imperials are trying to snuff it out before it really festers and grows into something huge. Here we see these people who obviously both criminals or wrongly convicted, but everyone joining together here to unite in a revolt against this oppressive government. And really, it's the small moments that we're seeing build in the show up until probably what's going to be the last of our big small moments at the end in 11 and 12 of this series. before next season really starts to give us kind of the highs of Cassian's life as we work towards Rogue One, where we see him in Rogue One. And this episode in particular does a lot for his character, showing us where we get to in Rogue One with him, where he is this person of inspiration, this figure of action, really, but he's not, he knows he's not the speaker, he's not the politician, he's not the leader in terms of his words. He doesn't, he can't inspire people like that, but he's able to pick out people like Kino or like Jin in Rogue One, and he attaches himself to them, and he allows their inspiration to kind of turn what he does into the significance of the rebellion. And it shows the importance of the small people, but also the cogs in the machine. And that's kind of what the rebellion's always been about since, you know, the original Star Wars. Like you said, Andy Serkis was excellent in this episode. He's been so good in all three of these episodes that he's been in. I'm hoping we get to see more of him in the future. If we don't, I think he served an adequate role. I mean, like we've seen with Cassian, he's starting to encounter all these people who are leaving imprints on his life, but maybe not actually being full pieces of his life. It's probably one of the reasons why we see him in Rogue One get to be so detached, really. He's all mission oriented. He doesn't really have friends. He's K2 is his only friend, really, and he just does what he's told, but he's also does what he believes in, and he doesn't let anything hold him back from that. I think seeing if Kino never comes back, if he actually is dead or just never is seen again by Cassian, I think it lines up perfectly with Cassian's detachment in Rogue One. And the prison break, conceptually, all of that worked really well too. Really dug the episode. So usually we go onto the ISB here. Well, the ISB is really like one scene with Dedra and the rest of the group talking about the ambush that they've set up, the trap they set up. It's going to work. But then, and I think this is where we're going to split our third section here. Let's split that into two parts. Let's do the ISB and Luthen this time versus, and then we'll say Mon Mothma for the end. Then we get the ISB agent Lonnie, who is now actually an informant for Luthen within the ISB, who's kind of been giving him information from the rebellion to kind of promote his status as he works his way up in the ISB, while he also simultaneously gives Luthen back information so Luthen can achieve his small victories. It's a really interesting idea and angle here, and it leads to an absolutely excellent scene still in Skarsgård. Sanak, what were your thoughts on the reveal in this episode and what Luthen gets to do in this scene?
It's definitely one of the more meteor scenes that Stellan Skarsgård has had in a while. And I know we've been kind of clamoring for it, and it just all came at once. You know, it's just kind of thrown out there like, oh, you you have to have the meeting today, and he's like, it's, you know, it could be a trap, it could not, but either way, we're screwed if we don't take it, right? So I was like, okay, this is like a huge new twist for this episode that I thought was focused just entirely on the prison break. But I was like, okay, let's go with it. And I thought Stellan's whole like look, kind of looking like a Sith with his cloak in the background. You can't really see his face till he comes up. And then as he delivers like what he sacrificed at the end of the day his humanity, right? I thought that was like the way it was built up was so good. Um, yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense for why he's been able to essentially be invisible in a very visible environment. It explains why specific things possibly are leaked out of the ISB, which I think would be a pretty interesting angle to be explored, especially in this caliber of a show and with these sort of characters. But regardless, it gives me a little bit more justification for why something like Aldani leaked out, which you really wouldn't. And like you said so many times, Liam, just why is that out there? Yeah, it makes sense if you got one of your top guys, one of these rising stars himself, being the one plugging these little pieces here and there. And plugging these pieces because he has no choice. You know, now Luthen's like, oh, I know about your family. Wonderful about hear about your daughter and all that. It really symbolized everything I wanted about Luthen's character in one scene. That why is he not there in Rebels? Why is he not like even like a legendary figure that's associated or connected with the rebellion? However, my biggest critique would be why not put this in the last episode, like you were saying off camera, Liam? Like that could have been done better after this wonderful prison break. Then we have this little chunk that I would have taken a few minutes out of, and made a more definitive ending for how Cat gets off planet. So the pacing of it was a little clunky. But other than that, I think it was fine. I really do. I think for what it had to say, it was great. I just don't know if the placement was all that awesome.
I agree with that. I think you could have put the scene even at the beginning of this episode and it would have played out a little better, maybe right after the Mon Mothma meeting that she has, right before the prison break starts to go down. I think it just cutting back to Cassian running away to like end this episode, it feels so far removed because this is such a long, meaty monologue that's going on. It is a huge twist to what we've known of the ISB and what we've known of Luthen in general, that it starts to beg more questions for future episodes. And then you go back, oh yeah, there's the prison break. It's just the placement. I think if you move it, but this scene in general was excellent. Stellan Skarsgård killed it. I do like this angle. I do love that Luthen's got his own people within the ISB. Like when he's setting up a network, he's either downplaying it to Mon Mothma or like he's really keeping all his cards close to the chest. Really, nobody knows him. And like he describes in his monologue, like he's given everything up. He lives by himself, and everything, all his plans, all his thoughts, everything are for him alone, and he plays all his cards to the utmost degree. Like he does not let anybody know anything. He's ruthless, and I like seeing that because I like seeing Cassian bred out of the Luthen tradition. Like that's the tradition he's in Andor. Again, connecting him back to the Luthens or the General Dravens. Like those people they're the like line, like the line that's slightly between the Saw Gerreras and the Mon Mothmas are the Luthens and the General Dravens, who are cutthroat, willing to do anything for the rebellion, but believe in still going about it within the semblance of a cause rather than just in pure chaos. I like that we're feeding that with Luthen. And I like this new angle because it gives us another piece of tension, another edge to the tension when we have those meetings with Dedra, because Dedra has been a character that so far we've seen just kind of start to figure out everything. She's piecing together. She's really moving up, and she's been our ISB. She's been our person to like not necessarily root for because she's a bad guy and she's going after our main characters, but since she's our POV, we're like interested in what her schemes are. And now having this Lonnie character, that it gives another side to Dedra that makes her even scarier and gives that tension for like, when she's discovering things. Now we know this guy's in it. This show is so well pieced together. It's such a thoughtful show. So the final part we have to talk about, which was also just one scene, but it did give us a few extra angles for where this might go. We have to talk about Mon Mothma and her scene, her meeting with the banker, the semi-scummy banker that nobody wants to talk about. But it doesn't go too well. Sanak, what are your thoughts on the Mon Mothma scene we got in this episode?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything that we've seen politically play out for Mon Mothma has been a bust. Right? No one listens to her in the Senate. Even the political machinations that she's trying to do behind her supposed cover, and that's what results in this banker. Like, how are you going to move 400,000 credits, right? Especially with new imperial laws about money and all that, which brings us this banker. And I don't know who the actor was, but I was not expecting him to be as engaging, because for the most part, he's playing it very, very straight. Like he's not scummy in the way that a Star Wars villain can kind of easily slip into. And then he's like, well, I just want an invite next time and to be able to bring my son. And it's like, oh, so that's what this big thing was all about for this whole season of Mon Mothma. Is she really the politician that's competent? Not anymore. She already knows she's in a failed system, but it's what we have to see in this season, to me at this point, is that nothing will work no matter how hard she's tried. It's 15 years gone by. What has she really done? And now she's put them in the most precarious position where her daughter doesn't like her at all. Her husband doesn't care much about her. Our baker friend knows a lot about Mon Mothma's husband. And I feel like that's what's going to fall apart these next two episodes, while we have our Luthens and everyone ISP all crashed into Ferrix. this woman's life is not directly falling apart, but now her daughter is a bargaining chip that she's thought about. I think this is where those really toxic family dynamics that have been seeping out come to play. So I think that'll be a very interesting juxtaposition moving into these final two episodes.
Right. We've talked about in our predictions a lot with Mon Mothma about the different levels of rebellion, the different levels of rebellion leaders we've seen throughout the show. And Mon Mothma is definitely on the idealistic level, a rebel. She thinks she can revive this system that she's been in her entire life, but she deep down knows that she can't. And this banker is the first step into seeing her take a step into the direction of needing to do whatever is necessary for the rebellion. And the series season finale for her will be the same. It's going to be, are you willing to sacrifice everything? Are you willing to get to the point where Luthen is, where he's alone, but his whole life is this cause and he's trying to make it real? Does she want the rebellion to be real, or does she want her family? Does she want her perfect life, her richness? She can keep all that in the empire. It's just her moral complex, her conscience that struggles with the empire. Can she give up her daughter? Can she give up her husband? Can she give up her status? All of that is up in the air for Mon Mothma, and that's where the show is headed. And I think that's a really great direction to take her. That scene was, again, super powerful, just like the Luthen scene and just like the Kino scene. We've gotten these great actors who are getting so much material to chew on. There's so much tension built up in the dialogue. These next two episodes should be something special, and hopefully they are. And we will be talking about them on our predictions and speculation, which will be out on Friday. So make sure to check that video out. But that's going to wrap this up for Andor episode 10 review. Thank you all so much for watching. Like I said at the beginning, if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do so. We're on the road to 1,000 subs. We're about 50 or less away by now, and we would really appreciate all of you who are watching this who have not subscribed to subscribe. It really helps us with YouTube and YouTube's algorithm to give you guys the best Star Wars content we can. It's the way to show us you like what we do and you want to see more. Please like the video as well, and then comment below. Let us know your thoughts on Andor episode 10. Did you enjoy this episode? Did it live up to the hype for you? Let us know down below. We have a bunch of stuff coming out. Like I said, there's a tier list coming out next week. So if you want to vote on the poll for that, make sure you do so within the next couple days before we officially decide on what that topic will be. We just posted yesterday how to adapt Attack of the Clones into a Disney Plus series. You want to check that out. And then on Friday, like I said, prediction speculation will be out, as well as our continued reviews for Andor next week for episode 11. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.